In a powerful and impassioned address, President Ibrahim Traoré just spoke directly to the people of Burkina Faso, unveiling bold plans, sharp warnings, and a future vision that's already sparking reactions around the world. From promising economic independence to fiercely rejecting foreign meddling, Traoré's latest national speech, delivered just days ago, is shaking up West Africa's political landscape. But what exactly did he say? What does it mean for the Burkinabe people? And how are citizens, critics, and the global community responding? In today's episode, we break down Ibrahim Traoré's most recent national address, dissecting his key messages, the tone he struck, the promises he made, and what all this signals for the future of Burkina Faso. Let's dive in. Key messages of the speech. Traoré's speech focused on three main themes: sovereignty, security, and economic self-reliance. He emphasized Burkina Faso's need to break free from foreign influence, particularly from Western powers like France and international financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF. "We will not bow to those who plunder our resources," Traoré declared, accusing Western nations of exploiting Africa's wealth while offering little in return. He highlighted his government's efforts to nationalize key industries, including gold mining, to ensure Burkina Faso benefits from its natural resources. Security was another major focus. Burkina Faso has been battling a decade-long jihadist insurgency linked to groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, which control about 40% of the country's territory. Traoré acknowledged the ongoing violence, including a recent attack by Jama'at Nusrat al-Islam wa al-Muslimin, JNIM, in Djibo on May 11, 2025, where insurgents briefly seized a provincial capital. He vowed to intensify military operations, stating, "We will fight until every inch of our land is free." Traoré also claimed that some foreign powers are indirectly supporting terrorist groups to destabilize the country. Finally, Traoré spoke about economic progress and self-reliance. He cited recent economic forecasts, such as the Institute for Security Studies' projection of 8% annual GDP growth from 2025 to 2043, which could lift 2.4 million Burkinabe out of poverty. He highlighted achievements like the construction of a national gold refinery, the reopening of the Sofitex textile factory, and the launch of cotton processing plants. These initiatives, he argued, would create jobs and reduce dependence on foreign imports. Tone of the speech. The tone of Traoré's address was defiant, passionate, and populist. He spoke directly to the Burkinabe people, using simple language to connect with ordinary citizens, especially the youth. His rhetoric was filled with anti-imperialist fervor, echoing the spirit of Sankara's revolutionary speeches. Phrases like, "We will never bend our backs," and "Africa must chart its own course," resonated strongly with audiences frustrated by decades of foreign influence. However, Traoré's tone was also challenging, particularly when addressing international critics. He dismissed accusations from U.S. General Michael Langley, who claimed Traoré was misusing Burkina Faso's gold reserves for personal gain. Traoré called such statements lies meant to tarnish our revolution. His sharp criticism of Western media and governments underscored his determination to reject external interference, even at the cost of strained diplomatic relations. Despite the fiery rhetoric, Traoré struck a hopeful note when discussing the future. He portrayed his government's reforms as a new dawn for Burkina Faso, promising a future where citizens could live with dignity and pride. This blend of defiance and optimism has become a hallmark of Traoré's public persona. New promises to Burkina Faso. Traoré made several new promises in his speech, building on his earlier commitments to transform the country. First, he pledged to expand free education, claiming that his government is working to make schooling accessible from nursery to university. While some online posts exaggerated this as a fully implemented policy, Traoré clarified that the plan is in progress, with funding allocated to build more schools and train teachers. Second, he promised to strengthen the Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, VDP, a civilian militia supporting the military against insurgents. Traoré announced plans to equip the VDP with better training and weapons, aiming to bolster local resistance to jihadist attacks. This move is part of his broader strategy to involve citizens in national security efforts. Third, Traoré committed to further infrastructure development, including the completion of the Ouagadougou-Donsine Airport by late 2025 and the expansion of paved roads across rural areas. These projects, he argued, would improve connectivity and boost economic activity, particularly in agriculture. Citizen reactions. The speech was met with enthusiasm by many Burkinabe, particularly young people and supporters of Traoré's junta. On April 30th, 2025, thousands rallied in Ouagadougou to show solidarity with Traoré, waving Burkina Faso and Russian flags. Protesters like Salifou Ouedraogo praised Traoré's rejection of Western-style democracy, arguing that Africa has its own way of governing. Social media platforms, especially X, were flooded with posts hailing Traoré as a new Sankara and a champion of African sovereignty. One user wrote, "Traoré speaks the truth about the IMF and the West. He's fighting for us." However, not all citizens were convinced. Some expressed skepticism about Traoré's promises, pointing to the worsening security situation. A resident of Djibo interviewed by BBC News said, "We hear big speeches, but jihadists are still attacking our towns." Others criticized the junta's crackdown on dissent, including the forced conscription of critics like activist Arona Lore into military service. These actions have fueled concerns about Traoré's authoritarian tendencies. Opposition reactions, opposition groups, and civil society organizations were largely critical of the speech. Prominent figures like Ablase Ouedraogo, a former foreign minister, accused Traoré of using anti-imperialist rhetoric to distract from his failure to restore security. In a statement, Ouedraogo said, "Words are not enough. We need results, not promises." The junta's decision to extend Traoré's rule until 2029, announced in July 2024, has also drawn ear from opposition leaders who argue it undermines the promise of democratic elections. International media reactions. International media coverage of the speech was mixed, reflecting Traoré's polarizing image. Outlets like BBC News and Reuters acknowledged his popularity among African youth, but highlighted his failure to curb the insurgency. The BBC noted that Traoré's fiery rhetoric resonates, but security remains elusive. Reuters described the speech as a bold challenge to the West, but cautioned that his pivot to Russia could deepen Burkina Faso's isolation. Western media, such as France 24, were more critical, focusing on Traoré's authoritarian measures and strained relations with France, and the US French President Emmanuel Macron has previously called Traoré part of a Baroque alliance with Russia, a sentiment echoed in some European reports. In contrast, Russian state media praised Traoré's speech, framing it as a stand against neo-colonialism. Press TV, an Iranian outlet, called him a vocal champion of a multipolar world. Some African media, like Black Agenda Report, celebrated Traoré's vision for the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, which includes Mali and Niger. They portrayed his speech as a step toward regional unity and self-determination. However, outlets like Africa Check warned against misinformation, debunking claims that Traoré threatened to wipe out Nigeria, which circulated online. The direction Traoré is pushing Burkina Faso. Traoré's speech reveals his determination to transform Burkina Faso into a sovereign, self-reliant nation, free from Western influence. His focus on nationalizing resources, strengthening the military, and investing in infrastructure reflects a long-term vision of economic and political independence. The alliance with Russia and the AES signals a shift toward new geopolitical partnerships, challenging the dominance of traditional allies like France and the US. However, Traoré's path is fraught with challenges. The ongoing insurgency threatens to undermine his promises, while his crackdown on dissent risks alienating segments of the population. Economic growth projections are promising, but translating them into tangible benefits requires governance reforms, which Traoré has yet to fully implement. His rejection of IMF and World Bank loans, while popular, raises questions about how Burkina Faso will fund its ambitious projects. Ibrahim Traoré is not just giving speeches, he's shaping a new narrative for Burkina Faso, one built on sovereignty, strength, and a rejection of old alliances. But will these promises lead to lasting reform or further isolate the country from international support? As Burkina Faso walks this tightrope between revolution and risk, one thing is clear: Traoré is doubling down, and the world is watching. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Ibrahim Traoré's latest speech to the nation. If you found this breakdown insightful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss an update on major geopolitical shifts like this one. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and stay tuned.